We're just going to get into it. All right?
Madam Vice President, thank you for the time.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Brett.
You know, voters tell pollsters all over the country and here in Pennsylvania that immigration is one of the key issues that they're looking at this election, and specifically the influx of illegal immigrants from more than 150 countries. How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right
do you,
now,
just a number. Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point.
All right. She has no interest in genuinely answering these questions straight up, straightforward. She wants this man to sit there to ask his question and sit there as she filibusters and says whatever she wants to say, regardless of what the question was. They had record low illegal alien crossings during Trump's administration because of all of those laws that he put in place. They repealed all of it. So they purposely allowed illegal aliens into America. So why is she refusing to acknowledge, or why is she refusing to be upfront about the amount of illegal aliens that her administration deliberately allowed to come over the border?
When you came into office, your administration immediately reversed a number of Trump border policies. Most significantly, the policy that required illegal immigrants to be detained through deportation, either in the U.S. or in Mexico. And you switched that policy. They were released from custody awaiting trial. So instead, included in those were a large number of single men, adult men, who went on to commit heinous crimes. So, looking back, do you regret the decision to terminate Remain in Mexico at the beginning of your administration?
At the beginning of our administration, within practically hours of taking the oath, the first bill that we offered Congress, before we worked on infrastructure, before the Inflation Reduction Act, before the Chips and Science Act, before the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath, was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
It was essentially a pathway to citizenship for the... Yes, ma'am.
May I finish responding, please? But you have to let me finish, please.
It's very clear. Her team has curated this response to every topic, whether it be immigration or what have you. There is this curated response that she is going to say, it doesn't matter what the question is. If you say immigration, she has that one set rehearsed response because you said immigration. How can you not feel like this woman thinks she's slick? She is running for the president of the United States, and she's acting like she's too good to be upfront with what she's going to do when she gets in office. She wants to keep giving these vague word salad answers that nobody cares about. The very first question the man asked, she dodged it like off rip. The very first question, let's get straight to the point. What do you mean, let's get straight to the point? The man asking you a very direct question. The point is, how many people has your administration allowed? How many illegal aliens has your administration allowed through that border? You should be shouting it from the rooftops. You should be very proud because you did it on purpose.
In our country, killing people. It would have allowed us to put more resources into prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, which I have done as the Attorney General, former Attorney General of a border state.
Madam Vice President, a couple of things.
Prosecuted trafficking of drugs, guns, and human beings. And Donald Trump, but let me just finish.
Six Democrats voted against that bill.
Learned about that bill and told them to kill it because he preferred to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And in this election, this is rightly a discussion that the American people want to have. And what they want are solutions, and they want a president of the United States who's not playing political games with the issue.
I hear you.
But actually is focused on fixing
Six
it.
Democrats voted against that bill. It would have allowed 1.8 million illegal immigrants into the country a year. A lot of conservatives had a problem with it. These are the 6 Democrats. But more importantly, back to the original premise, Jocelyn Nungari, Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, they are young women who were brutally assaulted and killed by some of the men who were released at the beginning of the administration, well before a negotiated bipartisan bill. Former President Clinton actually referred to Laken Riley Sunday, campaigning for you in Georgia, saying if those men had been properly vetted, Laken Riley probably would not have been killed. So if it wouldn't have happened, this is well before any negotiation. This is well before Donald Trump got involved in the politics. This is a specific policy decision by your administration to release these men into the country. So what I'm saying to you, do you owe
Brett,
those families an apology?
Let me just say, first of all, those are tragic cases. There's no question about that. There is no question about that. And I can't imagine the pain that the families of those victims have experienced for a loss that should not have occurred. So that is true. It is also true that if a border security had actually been passed 9 months ago, it would be 9 months.
How would more border agents at the border, how would that have kept Jocelyn Nungari from being murdered by illegal aliens that were unvetted, caught, and then released because your administration had a catch and release policy? How would more border agents, how would that have?
Madam Vice President, it was a policy decision in the early part of your administration. I will let one of the mothers talk about it. Take a listen.
Because of the Biden-Harris administration open border policies catch and release, they were enrolled in the Alternatives to Detention program. This meant that they were released into the United States. It was not even a full 3 weeks later that they would take my daughter, Jocelyn Nungari's life. I believe the Biden-Harris administration open border policies are responsible for the death of my daughter.
That's the early days. So do you owe them an apology is what I'm saying.
I will tell you that I am so sorry for her loss. I am so sorry for her loss, sincerely. But let's talk about what is happening right now with an individual who does not want to participate in solutions. Let's talk about that.
Oh my God. Do you know what happened to Jocelyn Nungari? You know, the headlines are that she was killed. Those are the headlines. I'm not exactly sure how these two men got a hold of this 12-year-old girl. But once they got a hold of her, they tied her up and they gang raped her. And then they strangled her to death. And she was found with a top, like a t-shirt or something on her top. No bottoms. They left her there like that. Tied up, I believe. It's, they said that these two men could have possibly been members of a Venezuelan gang. Trey something.
The NYPD says these are suspected members of the ruthless Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, which has been infiltrating the U.S. for the last 2 years. NYPD Assistant Chief of Detectives Jason Savino telling me it is believed this video was made while the gang members were in Ecuador, and its purpose is to recruit new members.
Then, when you fast forward, you see the same individuals where? In Times Square. So that's our concern.
The NYPD says Tren de Aragua has been making it over the border with the migrant influx and is getting established in New York.
What we do see is they are trying to grow.
The gang has gone from petty crimes like shoplifting and stealing cell phones and jewelry to all-out shootouts in the streets. Alleged gang member Bernardo Raul Mata recently confessing to police that gang members are being instructed to shoot police officers.
I believe I'm the first person here in Washington, maybe in American politics, that warned about this gang all the way back in January or February of this year. And the reason why is Venezuelan migrants were telling me about it. This is originated as a prison gang inside of Venezuela. Then they spread to Ecuador and Chile and Peru and neighboring Colombia, neighboring countries, and basically joined up with other gangs to conduct these operations, particularly targeting Venezuelan migrant communities in those countries. And it was inevitable. It was just a matter of time before they joined the migratory flow and entered the United States. And now we are seeing them in communities in the United States where they're following the same patterns that they follow in these other places: murder for hire, extortion, human trafficking, drug running. They're basically a organized criminal organization, and a very violent one. And now their members are coming into the United States because there's more money to steal here and more people to go after here.
These two gang members just walked across the border. They were caught and then just released into the American public. Caught, released. Caught, released. That's her policy. That's her administration's policy on illegal immigration.
The Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement confirms that more than 13,000 illegal immigrants convicted of murder have been caught at the border and then released into the United States.
ICE has something called a non-detained docket. Essentially what that is it means migrants who were encountered by DHS but are no longer in federal custody. So who's on this non-detained docket? It's illegal immigrants who were caught and released at the border, released with the court date years away. They're in immigration proceedings, combined with illegal immigrants who have already been ordered deported from the country by a judge but are still here roaming the country. So keep that in mind. They're currently tracking 425,000 non-citizens who have been convicted of a crime. Of that number, over 13,000 non-citizens have convictions for homicide and are on the non-detained docket, meaning they're roaming the country right now. On top of that, there are another 15,811 non-citizens convicted of sexual assault who are roaming the country right now on ICE's non-detained docket.
Catch them, give them a court date, trust that they will come back of their own will, of their own free will, to their court date, and just release them, just let them go. And so after they were released, they snatched up some 12-year-old little girl, tied her up, gang raped her, and then strangled her to death. And the man asked her, do you owe the mother of that 12-year-old Jocelyn an apology? Do you owe her an apology? She said, that's so sad. And I'm so sorry for her loss. Let's move on. Let's change the subject. Let's redirect back to Trump. Because I can't run on how great I'm going to be for the country. I'm going to run on how terrible Donald Trump is and how he's a fascist and how he's literally Hitler and Stalin and them. This lady's a monster. First of all, she's not even showing any real empathy. That's not real empathy. She didn't take any responsibility for that happening to that little girl, and it happened as a direct result of her administration's decisions. To be so, like, you know, if I didn't know any better, I would think they was working with them cartels, the Mexican cartels at the border, with as lax as their laws were.
There's a misconception that the over 10 million undocumented people coming across the border in the last 4 years are just looking for a better life. While that is true in many cases, U.S. government policy at the border is facilitating a multi-billion-dollar smuggling operation by the cartels. The cartels are not simply providing transportation for a cost. They are sexually assaulting women and children, and they're taking the lives of people without any fear of retribution. And I'm terrified each and every single day by what is happening with no regard for our safety. We deserve security, we deserve honesty from our government. How have cartels been permitted to act with impunity at our California border for so long? Why are immigration laws not being enforced? Why am I finding the identifications of young children and newborns at the border who are being smuggled and trafficked here on a daily basis? Many of these children come here unaccompanied. This is because the cartels have realized that they can profit through the failed federal government's Office of Refugee Resettlement Program that delivers children to unvetted sponsors that are part of a transnational criminal organization. While on the border, my team located an abandoned cell phone. We accessed the cell phone and discovered it was from someone who traveled from Wuhan, China to San Gabriel, California. I found around 40 different chat groups via an app on the phone that provide instructions on how to get smuggled into the U.S. The most prominent chat groups are Chinese, but my team has infiltrated Russian, Ukrainian, Azerbaijan, and other Middle Eastern chats as well. The chats do not stop. They run 24/7. They contain a treasure trove of intelligence information. This research has led to chats that are associated with a sophisticated network of CCP operatives working in our country. In addition to coordinates to infiltrate the border, I've discovered detailed information on our country's nuclear posture. My team and I have discovered many cases of sexual assault at the border. The cartels are so emboldened that they leave what they call trophies that depicts the sexual exploitation they're responsible for along the route they smuggle migrants. I have seen it firsthand. My research has uncovered that children who speak a different language arrive with parents who speak a different language that they have. My research has also discovered a case where a Guatemalan national with a counterfeit visa sexually assaulted the child of a local Navy SEAL. I have attempted to share content that I found on the border that is a matter of national security. I've been told that due to the political climate, federal agents would be retaliated against for actively investigating this material. So I'm very confused at things like the DNA program where they would check the DNA of the child and compare it to that of the adult they were with. We're not doing that anymore. The Biden administration did not renew that program. From what I remember, approximately 30% of those children were not related to the people they were coming across with. That's when we were doing the DNA testing. We're no longer doing it. So what's the number now? We have no idea. The people behind me deserve an answer as to why that program it was not reinstated. Tim Tebow sat up here and explained that 20,000 kids were missing. Then Tara Rodas came along and explained that 85,000 children were missing, migrant children were missing in this country. I'm here today to explain that we now have approximately 300,000 plus children missing in this country. That is unacceptable, the greatest country in the world. It's unsat. We need this to be a bipartisan issue. And I know you said this was a bipartisan hearing, Congressman. I don't see any Democrats here.
When the whole purpose of having immigration laws is to provide a hostile environment to something such as a Mexican drug cartel and human traffickers. Their administration got in power and made it easy for them to traffic drugs across that border, made it easy for them to human traffic, made it easy for illegal aliens of all around the world to just walk across the border and commit crimes, steal, murder, rape. Her administration made it easy for them to do this. So many people, I don't really get it. I guess, people are starting to wake up, but they're not quite there. So many people keep using the word incompetent in reference to this administration. Incompetent? So somebody poses an idea to you, hey, let's repeal every bill and every law that was created to protect American citizens from illegal aliens who may not have this country's best interests at heart, who may not be the best of people, so that they can be forced to go about their immigration process into the United States the right way. Let's repeal all those laws, right? All those protections. And let's go with let's enforce a catch and release policy. So where if an illegal alien gets caught committing a crime, we'll just give him a court date and let him go. I mean, that sounds like a good idea to me. I don't really see what could go wrong. Didn't she just say that she's all for good ideas? She's not going to turn down a good idea. She just said that in a recent interview she just did. But did that sound like a good idea to you? Does that sound smart? Would a sensible person come to that conclusion that that's a good and responsible thing to do for a country that you are supposed to be a steward over, for a country you're supposed to be protecting and serving? Obviously not. These people aren't stupid. They're doing this on purpose. This administration is attacking us. They don't work for us. Her and Biden, they did not work for us. They do not work for us. Joe Biden spent like a third or a fourth, something like that, a third or a fourth of his presidency on the beach, tipping and falling over, humiliating the United States, making us look like a joke. That's what Joe Biden did. And she was MIA. CNN was like, where is Kamala Harris? That entire time, for those 3 years, they were like, where is she at? And then she just pops up around the 3.5 year mark and gonna have the audacity to run for president after she was MIA all that time. CNN didn't even like her. They was dragging her. CNN, MSNBC, CBS, all of them, they were dragging her and saying that she was the most disliked vice president in like history. And then all of a sudden they started pretending that she was this rock star.
As well.
But do you want to answer
in
her?
all fairness, I told you, I feel awful for what she and her family have experienced.
During that time,
I feel awful. She's not about to apologize to nobody. When she pulled that stunt on the Breakfast Club and Charlamagne asked her, so did you smoke weed? Yeah, I smoked it. My family's from Jamaica. You ain't know? My family's from Jamaica. Of course. I mean, what do you mean? Of course. Her dad, after that aired, her father was so mad. I mean, the man was livid. He went on record and publicly said that response was a disgrace. That was a disgrace. You really gonna do that to our family name for identity politics because you think that makes you more relatable to black people? You really did that? That was a disgrace. And I publicly disassociate myself from that disgrace. He said that.
When they asked her if she was pro-legalizing marijuana, she said, of course I smoked marijuana. Half my family's from Jamaica. Are you kidding me? Well, her own father had a problem with that. But listen to what she said on The Breakfast Club.
You oppose legalizing weed.
That's not true.
I know.
and look, I joke about it, half joking. Half my family's from Jamaica. Are you kidding me?
You ever smoked?
I have.
Okay. Like
And I inhale. I did inhale.
It's really hysterical for the former attorney general of that state to talk about doing something illegal, laughing about it, giggling about it, and trying to get some traction for it. Among the people that were upset by it, her dad, Donald Harris, from Jamaica, an economics professor at Stanford University, says this: "My dear departed grandmothers, as well as my deceased parents, must be turning in their grave right now to see their family's name, reputation, and proud Jamaican identity being connected in any way, jokingly or not, with the fraudulent stereotype of pot-smoking, joy-seeking, and in pursuit of identity politics." Man, what a blast at his daughter who wants to be the next president.
No kidding. He added, and he had sent this statement to Jamaica Global Online. He said, "Speaking for myself and my immediate Jamaican family, we wish to categorically disassociate ourselves from this travesty." The campaign had no comment as of yesterday.
The man was livid. Somebody asked her after that response, "How do you feel about your father's response to what you said on the Breakfast Club?" She said, "He has a right to his opinion." She didn't feel the need to apologize to her own father for humiliating him. Obviously, the man felt humiliated. Obviously, the man, he was distraught. He publicly shamed his daughter. Publicly for that. And made it very clear that he was irate that she did that. And her response was, he's entitled to his own opinion. This lady don't have no empathy. This lady don't feel, it doesn't seem like she feels really anything. She's not sorry. If you feel some type of way, if a family member of yours, I don't know, was like brutally raped and murdered, I am so sorry for your loss.
Said repeatedly that the border was secure. When in your mind did it start becoming a crisis?
I think we've had a broken immigration system transcending, by the way, Donald Trump's administration even before. Let's all be honest about that. I have no pride in saying that this is a perfect immigration system. I've been clear, I think we all are, that it needs to be fixed. We need more. I was just down at the border talking with border agents, and they will tell you, and I'm sure you probably, I know you investigate and you are a serious journalist, they will tell you, we need more judges.
I was just at the border talking with the border agents. The border agents endorsed Trump. What you bringing them up for? And it was border agents who originally told Trump that they needed a wall. The wall wasn't Trump's idea. That was the border agents' idea. What are you bringing up the border agents for? You don't care what they're talking about.
We need to process those cases faster. We need the support for those cases that should be prosecuted. They need more resources, and Congress ultimately is the only place that's going to get fixed, Brad. Well, that's how this system works.
That's the premise of this question. There were 90-plus executive orders that were rescinded in the first days. Many of those were Trump border policies. I'm not going to stay here because there's other things to talk about, but you frequently talk to the Border Patrol Union for support of that bipartisan bill, and they did. They supported it. But they also just endorsed Donald Trump and said, you've been, quote, a failure with border security. Mm-hmm. Why do you think they said that?
I think they're frustrated, and I get it. They want support. They want support, and that's what that border security bill would have done. These guys down at the border, these men and women, they're working hard. They're working around the clock. I get it.
There's a lot of people that look back at what you said in 2019 when you first ran for president. And there have been changes, and you've talked about some of them. When it comes to immigration, you supported allowing immigrants in the country illegally to apply for driver's license, to qualify for free tuition at universities, to be enrolled in free health care. Do you still support those things?
Listen, that was 5 years ago, and I'm very clear that I will follow the law. I have made that statement over and over again, and as Vice President of the United States, that's exactly what I've done, not to mention before.
If that's the case.
She got all these long, drawn-out explanations for any other questions, but he brings up some outlandish, ridiculous, unscrupulous where illegal immigrants are allowed to apply for driver's licenses. Oh, that was 5 years ago. Didn't you bring up something Trump did on that debate stage? Didn't you bring up something that Trump did like 40 years ago? You brought that up. You brought up the Central Park 5. How many years ago was that? Oh, that was 5 years ago. I don't support that.
You chose a running mate, Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, who signed those very things into state law. So do you support that?
We are very clear, and I am very clear, as is Tim Walz, that we...
Notice the hesitation. You see that?
We must support and enforce federal law, and that is exactly what we will do.
So
do you know why she keeps saying we must import and enforce federal law? Oh, I'm following the law. I'm going to follow the law because she intends to legislate. She intends to legislate those ideas. She intends to put that into law. That's why she keeps saying that. Instead of just saying out of her mouth, yes, I support that. Because she's a deceiver. She'll just say, oh, I support the law. Even though he's asking her a very specific question. She's going to sit there and be vague. Oh, I support the law. Because she's going to make it law. If she gets in office, she's going to make that law. Where illegal aliens can use our taxpayer dollars to get sex change surgery and to apply for benefits.
Let's just take immigration and look at what she said here. She said on immigration, she made this open-ended pledge to end immigrant detention. She said she supported taxpayer-funded gender transition surgeries for detained migrants. She also said she supported
taxpayer-funded gender transition surgeries for detained migrants. She actually said she supported that.
She both wrote and answered in the affirmative when she was asked this. Oh. And she said she also supported it for federal prisoners. Now, she also pledged to slash immigration detention by 50%, close all family and private facilities, and decrease funding for ICE, and then end ICE detainers with local law enforcement.
They're going to bankrupt us. That's their plan, to bankrupt us. You can't just support and put all of this money into a population that you don't even know can support itself. If you're pulling all of this money into a people and they're not giving anywhere near as much back as was given to them, then they're just taxing the system even more than we are already taxed. And she already said that she is about to raise taxes.
So these are some of the ways, but we've got to increase the corporate tax rate. We also have to increase taxes for the top 1%. And that part of that is going to be about repealing that tax bill that they just passed. And also looking at estate taxes are going to have to go up.
She's taxing everybody. Since when do people run on raising taxes? The audacity. And then you got all these insane celebrities talking about, oh, I'm voting for Kamala. After she said that she about to tax them to death. Does that make sense? Oh, I'm going to make all the corporations pay their fair share. She's not about to make these corporations pay nothing. They're supporting her campaign. All of these big, super mega corporations, these people donate to Democratic campaigns, Democratic candidates. She got all kinds of donations from these big corporations. You think she about to tax them? You think she has the gall to accept all this money from these big corporations and then punish them for doing so? These corporations will take everything that they have, along with all of their jobs that they offer that help support our economy, over to some other country before they get played by this lady like that. And you think the middle class is struggling now? If that happens, what position will the middle class be in then? With thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions of jobs leaving the United States because we want to keep electing people who think it's a good idea to run on higher taxes for corporations. That's less promotions. That's more layoffs. That's less bonuses. The more that you tax corporations.
Decriminalizing border crossings, like you said in 2019.
I do not believe in decriminalizing border crossings, and I've not done that as vice president. I will not do that as president.
Whatever, lady. You said out of your mouth, I don't know how many times.
I know what a crime looks like. An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal.
2 Venezuelan migrants are under arrest in Houston, charged with murdering 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungaray.
I know what a crime looks like. And I will tell you, an undocumented immigrant is not a criminal.
Days ago, another undocumented immigrant from Ecuador was arrested in New York City, accused of raping a 13-year-old girl in broad daylight.
An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal, and we have to correct course on this conversation in our country.
An undocumented immigrant from El Salvador was arrested in Oklahoma. Police say he raped and murdered Rachel Morin, a mother of 5 from Maryland.
I know what a crime looks like. An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal. An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal, and we have to correct course in this conversation. An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal, and we have to correct course on this conversation in our country.
They're all asylum seekers. Every last one of them, asylum seekers. Oh, they're not criminals.
It is our undocumented immigrants that are the least likely to commit a crime.
Police report as many as 75% of the people they've arrested in Midtown Manhattan for assault, robbery, and domestic violence are illegal migrants.
Police have tracked down a killer whose crimes span the country. Rachel Morin was dragged from a hiking trail in Maryland where she was raped and murdered.
Police say Brandon Ortiz Vite used a handgun he bought illegally to shoot Ruby Garcia multiple times on Friday.
The prime suspect charged in Laken Riley's murder was 26-year-old Jose Antonio Ibarra. He illegally entered the United States back in 2022.
A Texas grand jury indicted Rafael Govea Romero. He's accused of attacking 16-year-old Lisbeth Medina by repeatedly hitting her head and stabbing her.
So let's get our notions together about what we're talking about.
But we supposed to believe you're not going to decriminalize it, but you said out of your mouth, I don't know how many times, that you don't see them as criminals?
These are evolutions that you've had.
But let's be very clear. I'm the only person who's running for president who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations, from the Sinaloa cartel to the Guadalajara cartel to people who have trafficked in guns, drugs, and human beings. I have spent a significant part of my career going after people who present a threat to the safety of the American people and cross our border with the intent of doing us harm and cross our border illegally. And I will do that work as vice president. I take that work quite.
This lady's record is atrocious. This is what's so frustrating about the thought of so many people actually going into the voting booth and voting for this lady. There's no way you know her record. It makes more sense not to vote at all than to vote for Kamala Harris. But if you're doing so, I think it's because you're not really doing your due diligence. You don't know who this lady is. You have no idea who this lady is.
She used to say when she was running for district attorney in San Francisco, I've tried over 100 cases. I've tried over 100 cases. But if you look it up, that's not true. And her opponents were onto her.
Ms. Harris, how many cases have you tried? Can you tell us how many serious felonies you have tried? Can you tell us one?
I've tried about 50 cases, Mr. Fazio, and it's about leadership.
Ms. Harris, why does your information, which is still published, say that you tried hundreds of serious felonies? I think that's misleading. I think that's disingenuous. I think that shows that you are incapable of leadership and you're not to be trusted.
Here's another guy who actually worked with her. And there's a lot of crosstalk, but you should be able to hear it.
She worked for you, Kim. She worked for you for 2 years.
She worked for me for a year and a half. She tried one case. I was satisfied with the way she worked for me. I'm not knocking it. I was sorry she left.
All right, that guy says one case in a year and a half. She says he's lying. Well, she gets confronted at a luncheon by one of her opponents again, and then she has to dial it back a little bit more. Okay, what did she do? I've tried 30 cases. I've tried under 30 cases.
You should from now on address me as the mayor.
If ever a man and a municipality were made for each other, it is this man.
And who's clapping away on the side there? Who's that clapping away? That's Kamala Harris in 1995. What the hell is she doing there? She's not married to him. She's not working for him. She's not the district attorney. She's just his girlfriend. That's it. That's why she's in the position she's in right now, because she fooled around with married man Willie Brown back in the day.
I will not be shamed out of discussing this by people who say it's slut shaming or it's not relevant. It is relevant when a young candidate tries to sleep her way into politics and into power. And that is what it appears Kamala Harris did when she was a young political aspirant in San Francisco, when she had an affair with a man 30 years older than she was. She was 29 to 30 and he was 60, Willie Brown, who was like the godfather of San Francisco politics and very well known. And sure enough, that relationship paid dividends for her in more ways than one.
That's right, Megan. As you noted yesterday, it's completely fair game to talk about Willie Brown. It's how Kamala Harris went from a relatively unknown Alameda County prosecutor to the forefront of San Francisco social life and politics. Willie Brown was the most powerful politician in California when Kamala Harris started dating him. And he also gave her a number of positions. We're talking about $400,000 back in the 1990s. That's almost $800,000 in today's money. He appointed her to those positions that paid her lucratively. He gave her the keys to a BMW, and he went around the most powerful and most wealthy circles of San Francisco and California politics with Kamala Harris on his arm, opening up the doors to her professional and political future.
So it was back when, again, she was 30 years old. He was, at the time, Democratic Speaker of the California State Assembly, quoting here from a Washington Examiner piece, which is very good. The position that he gave her on the California Medical Assistance Commission in 1994 paid at that time over $70,000 a year, which is about $120,000 in current money. And she served on the board until 1998, so about 4 years. That medical commission met twice a month. So for 2 meetings a month, she was getting the equivalent of $120,000. And you know why Democrats in San Francisco were mad about it? It wasn't because she wasn't qualified, which she wasn't. It was because those positions are supposed to be saved for only the most prized Democrats who Willie Brown really owed favors to, who did really, amazing things to keep Willie Brown in power. But instead, he gave one to his lover. He was, by the way, still married, though he was reportedly estranged from his wife for a long time. This was technically an extramarital relationship. And they were mad that he gave one of his choice grifting positions, not to somebody who'd done a lot for Democratic politicians, but to Kamala Harris. And not just that, there was another one. He gave her a second position as well, which was basically the same kind of deal, where he just gave her an appointment. She reeked in tons of money, and boom, Bob's your uncle. She was off to the races in Dem politics. And then Willie Brown is on record as saying, I also then helped her with her next big position, which was becoming San Francisco DA.
And what she has done to people, how she has ruined lives for money. For money.
Because of truancy, California public schools lose $1.4 billion a year in funding. I want money.
I don't agree what Kamala Harris did to my mom.
So I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy.
And I spent a majority of my time here at the hospital. When Kamala Harris was the California Attorney General, she had me arrested and prosecuted because my handicapped daughter was sick in the hospital and had missed some days of school.
I have sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia is a hereditary disease and it is very, very painful.
All of a sudden, the police is outside my house and they started banging on the door. They told me I was under arrest for my child missing school. I was shocked. I said, but my baby is sick. The school knows that. And they said, go talk to Kamala Harris. Place your hands behind your back.
My mom did nothing wrong. We did everything we were supposed to. I was always bringing doctor's notes, always calling the school to let them know that I was in the hospital.
But my hell was just beginning. They gave me 2 charges. I spent the next 2 years in court fighting these charges. Kamala assigned her nastiest prosecutors to my case.
My homicide prosecutors, my gang prosecutors. And they went over there and I said, when you go over there, look really mean.
All the time I had to spend going to court, I was struggling to care for my children. I lost my job and couldn't pay rent, and we got evicted. I became homeless. We had to move into a motel.
And I ended up being in the hospital a lot during her trial. And in that hospital stay was when I had my stroke.
I had a stroke about 4 or 5 days ago. And right now I'm doing pretty good. My hand is doing okay, I guess.
The truancy program got a lot of criticism too. Did you actually lock anybody up?
No, we never locked anybody up. We did prosecute some cases, but far few, only about 20.
We're gonna get into it, but what she has done throughout her career is atrocious.
Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way. The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you are in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row, innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that.
It's atrocious. So many people got so many negative things to say about Trump and what comes out of his mouth, right? I noticed that I hear so little about what he actually did while he was in office. What he did, his fruit. Tangible fruit that he created while he was in office. I hear that talked about so little. Why? And I talk to Christians about this, but they don't talk about his fruit. They don't talk about what he actually did, what he created, the actual tangible results, the fruit of his administration. I don't hear it talked about. Everybody wants to keep going on and on and on about about his personality. His personality. Because I guess because we're in the age of social media. We're in the age of social media, so personality is important when it comes to running the country and all that. When it comes to striking fear in the hearts of our enemies across seas, having a good personality is important to a lot of people here. Okay.
Favorite President Trump story. This is my #1 favorite of all time. When we were negotiating with the Taliban, while President Trump was still the president, President Trump wanted to get out of Afghanistan, but he wanted a conditions-based withdrawal. Mm-hmm. Meaning that you do what we tell you to do, and then we will start pulling troops back slowly as long as you abide by our rules. It's President Trump and Mike Pompeo, and they are talking to Taliban leadership in the room, and they had one translator in the room. President Trump looked at the Taliban leader and said this: I want to leave Afghanistan, but it's going to be a conditions-based withdrawal. And translator translated. And he said, if you harm a hair on a single American, I'm going to kill you. And the translator goes, and Trump goes, tell him.
Yes.
Tell him what I said. Reached in his pocket, pulled out a satellite photo of the leader of the Taliban's home and handed it to him.
Shut up.
Got up and walked out the room.
Sure did.
Do you know for 18 months not a single American was killed in Afghanistan?
Sure did.
That's the definition of strength. That's what I'm talking about. And so you could imagine that kind of sentiment being around the world. If we have an embassy in another country, no one's going to touch it because they're going to be fearful that they'll get a Moab on their head.
Mm-hmm.
That's how President Trump rolls.
When I look at Donald Trump interact with people, you know, regular people, I don't see this mean Nazi, Hitler-esque tyrant. I see a regular guy. The man is regular. When he goes off and calls people stupid and all the other stuff, he's responding to people that got nothing but negative things to say about him. Personal attacks on him. What did that lady say? Oh, you called women disgusting pigs and blah blah blah. And he goes, only Rosie O'Donnell, because he don't like her. That's regular. So what? This lady is a monster.
What exactly did Tulsi Gabbard do to get added to the terror watch list? It came the day after she criticized the Biden administration right here on The Angle.
Our foreign policy decisions are being made by unelected people in the military-industrial complex who are profiting from us being in a constant state of war, and the national security state that has more power to undermine our freedoms and liberties when we are in a state of war. Kamala Harris does not have the strength to stand up to the military-industrial complex.
Okay, that's wild. Joining me now, Tulsi Gabbard, former U.S. Congresswoman, Fox News contributor. Tulsi, now, you serve this country in uniform, even getting deployed to Iraq. Thank you for going, unlike Tim Walz. And now you're being surveilled. I mean, it's a form of surveillance or hassling and intrusion upon your freedom to move by the government. What is this? I mean, I didn't believe it really when I first heard about it. I said, oh, that can't be. But how does this make you feel?
Laura, this is a clear act of political retaliation. There's no other way to put it. You laid out the sequence of events the very next day after my conversation with you on the air, warning the American people about how dangerous a Kamala Harris presidency would be. I was placed on this domestic terror watch list, which is called the Quiet Skies list under the Department of Homeland Security.
Attorney Tristan Leavitt, he writes that mission coverage in Ms. Gabbard's case reportedly involves 2 explosive detection canine teams, 1 transportation security analyst in explosives, 1 plainclothes TSA supervisor, and 3 federal air marshals on every flight Ms. Gabbard boards.
There has to be a plainclothes TSA supervisor, 3 federal air marshals on every flight she boards, 2 drug sniffing dogs. She got to have all that stuff just to get on the daggone plane. All because she spoke the truth.
But we look at why they are doing this. It has a chilling effect. It sends a warning both to me and to anyone else who even thinks about daring to criticize our own government, which is a guaranteed protected right under the First Amendment.
Yeah.
That we will be subject to a violation of our Fourth Amendment right to privacy through this kind of surveillance. And
a real live monster.
Reports of a harsh work environment under Kamala Harris have since resurfaced. And former Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who's also from California, said this about what he's heard working for her is like.
It is known in California and it's known in Washington. It is a heroic work environment if you work for her. Nobody lasts very long. Even as VP, when she didn't do anything, she could not keep staff. That is a person that the press will never talk about. How she treats people around her is a real indication of what she'll do in the future.
And reports of poor office culture with Harris are not new. A government watchdog reports Vice President Harris's office has nearly 92% staff turnover. Donald Trump had 72%. She had 92%. Back in 2022, one Harris aide said this about working for Kamala, quote, "It's always been a problem. You have to have your people around you." And a 2019 op-ed about then Senator Harris revealing, quote, "Senator Harris vocally throws F-bombs and other profanity constantly in her berating of staff and others. The staff is in complete fear of her, and she uses her profanity throughout the day." Even MSNBC host and former Harris staffer Symone Sanders hinted at struggling to work for the vice president.
It was new for me when I worked for her because I had never worked for a high-profile woman before. I had only ever worked for men. And there was one day at work where I was like, "Ma'am, you might be the last woman I work for because this is a
there's a story there.
It's a lot. This a lot that we got to deal with over in here." It was something though that I think any candidate, any person in power needs to be aware of what the criticism is.
Before Harris was appointed the Democrat nominee, progressive authors released a book revealing severe criticisms from her former staff. The book highlighted her struggle to articulate a coherent political vision, which left many staffers disillusioned. A top aide from her 2020 campaign remarked, "A lot of us on the campaign realized this person should not be president of the United States." Tensions within Harris's campaign were significant, especially between her sister and campaign chair Maya Harris and Juan Rodriguez, her campaign manager. The two operated from separate wings of the headquarters, holding separate meetings, leading to widespread dysfunction and reportedly financial mismanagement. While Harris claimed lack of funds as her reason for exiting the 2020 race, the book suggests that internal chaos and toxicity were also significant factors. In fact, when the state operations manager resigned in November 2019, she wrote a scathing letter stating she'd never seen an organization treat its staff so poorly. The authors argue that these issues of dysfunction and toxicity are a career-long theme that dates back to her tenure as district attorney. As VP, she's faced a staggering 91.5% staff turnover rate, including key figures like her chief of staff, communications director, and national security advisor. This has all fueled speculation about her capacity to maintain a stable team and effectively lead. A senior White House staffer stated, quote, "Kamala's not ready for primetime. She ain't made for this."
She has violated all kinds of civil rights all throughout her career.
I'm David Daleiden, and I'm the founder and project lead with the Center for Medical Progress. 5 years ago, my undercover videos caught Planned Parenthood's top leadership trafficking and selling the body parts of aborted infants. America's biggest abortion business was desperate and furious, so they turned to their political patron, then California Attorney General Kamala Harris, for help.
She's standing beside us, strong.
At Planned Parenthood's special request, Kamala Harris targeted me to punish and silence my message about the abortion industry and fetal trafficking. I'm not the first person to ever record undercover video in California. Local news reporters routinely record and publish undercover video exposing factory farming, corrupt medical practices, and unlicensed marijuana vendors. Yet somehow I have become the first person to ever have the California video recording law enforced against me for news gathering. Kamala Harris met in secret with a group of California Planned Parenthood executives in Los Angeles in March 2016, while she was running for U.S. Senate and promoting Planned Parenthood in her campaign. Action items from the meeting show that they discussed Planned Parenthood's legislative agenda in California, as well as Planned Parenthood's lies that my videos contained threats, with 2 of the Planned Parenthood witnesses in Kamala Harris's investigation present at the political meeting. Less than 2 weeks later, Kamala Harris sent 11 California DOJ agents to raid my one-bedroom apartment, with explicit instructions from Planned Parenthood to seize the computer and video equipment that I was using to publish the undercover videos. California Penal Code 632 prohibits secretly recording a confidential communication without the consent of all parties, and defines confidential as a communication that you cannot reasonably expect will be overheard by other people. So my team was scrupulous to record our California videos in places of public accommodation like crowded restaurants, where the conversations were obviously overheard. But you can't necessarily say the same thing about local TV reporters in California, who have taped inside of private doctors' offices and inside of private homes. Yet not a single one of them has ever been charged with undercover video recording in California in the 60-year history of California's video recording law. Mine is the first and only case. And there's another piece to the California video recording law that specifically allows recording even a confidential conversation in order to gather evidence relating to violent crimes. The entire purpose of our video recording in California was to document and expose the violent crimes of fetal trafficking, including selling infants aborted alive and killing them through organ harvesting and medical battery against pregnant women. If those aren't crimes of violence, I don't know what is. But Kamala Harris's investigation never even considered our purpose or addressed those crimes, even though local Southern California law enforcement prosecuted and shut down 2 of Planned Parenthood's business partners based on my video recordings. By the way, those business partners, the Da Vinci companies, they actually admitted guilt in a $7.8 million settlement for illegally selling body parts from abortions at Planned Parenthood Orange County. Who was the top abortion doctor for Planned Parenthood Orange County supplying those body parts? Dr. Jennifer Russo, one of the participants in the March 2016 meeting with Kamala Harris and one of the Planned Parenthood witnesses. It's pretty obvious that the reason that I alone was targeted by Kamala Harris is because I dared to criticize Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry. What Kamala Harris did isn't treating people fairly or equally under the video recording law. In fact, Kamala Harris's deputy prosecutor, Jeanette Jarone, admitted in a court filing that the reason her office targeted me alone among all undercover reporters in California was because my videos were, quote, edited for shock value, and that made me, quote, more culpable than other undercover reporters in California. Obviously, I dispute the characterization that my videos were edited for shock value. What they show Planned Parenthood doing is shocking enough. But more importantly, it is your First Amendment right to promote the significance of your own message. When she said that I was targeted because of the content of my videos, Kamala Harris's deputy prosecutor admitted that the reason that I was targeted and I alone was to punish what I have to say. Planned Parenthood sells baby parts. That's why I'm suing Kamala Harris, the California Attorney General, Planned Parenthood, and others in Los Angeles federal court for conspiracy to violate First Amendment civil rights. This is crucial to defend the First Amendment rights of all Americans to report on issues that matter and to listen to what we have to say to each other without fear of government punishment. Selling body parts is a crime. Reporting on it is not. I will never bow to the tyrannical vision of leaders like Kamala Harris, who believe that they are entitled to tell us what to think, what to believe, and what to say.
Stay tuned. Thank you for tuning in. This is Aaliyah's commentary, and I'll get with y'all in the next video.